The excavation site on Theta 9 had been active for 3 years, and Dr. Vexenar felt his mandibles clicking with anticipation as the final barrier fell away before them. The insectoid archaeologist's compound eyes reflected the glow of ancient machinery that hummed to life after millennia of silence, and he could barely contain his excitement at what lay beyond the massive vault door. "Commander Zalthos, inform the Galactic Council immediately," Vexenar said, his voice translator converting his clicking speech into standard galactic common. "We have breached the inner sanctum." The reptilian military officer's scales rippled with concern as he activated his communication device, reporting to the fleet in orbit above. Zalthos had been assigned to oversee this expedition specifically because of what they sought: the legendary infinite torque device, a weapon so powerful that ancient texts claimed it could reshape reality itself. Lieutenant Karen Hughes stood near the back of the chamber, datapad in hand, recording everything with calm professionalism. The human liaison officer from Earth's diplomatic corps had been observing the excavation for 6 months now, and she maintained her usual expression of polite interest. Beside her, Professor Danny Morris adjusted his glasses and made notes about the vault's architectural features. "The seals are intact," Vexenar announced, his translator carrying his words to everyone in the chamber. "Whatever the progenitors left here has remained untouched for at least 50,000 years. The other members of the archaeological team, a mix of species from across the Galactic Council, moved forward with reverence and fear. Everyone knew the legends. The progenitors had been the first spacefaring civilization in the galaxy, and they had vanished mysteriously, leaving behind only ruins and warnings. Dr. Vexenar, one of the Crithian researchers, called out, "The translation matrix has finished processing the warning glyphs." The lead archaeologist scurried over to the holographic display, his multiple legs carrying him swiftly across the ancient floor. The symbols that covered the vault's inner walls now appeared in translated form, and what Vexenar read made his blood run cold. "Power beyond measure," he read aloud, his voice shaking. "Capable of tearing apart the strongest bonds known to science. Use only with the greatest wisdom and understanding. Improper handling will result in catastrophic consequences." A collective gasp echoed through the chamber. Even the battle-hardened Commander Zalthos stepped back from the sealed container at the room's center. Karen glanced at Danny, who raised an eyebrow slightly. Neither human spoke, but they exchanged a look that suggested mild amusement. "We must establish a security perimeter," Zalthos declared, his reptilian voice firm with authority. "No one approaches the container until we have proper shielding and containment protocols in place." "Agreed," Vexenar said, though his scientific curiosity warred with his sense of caution. "The Galactic Council must be informed of the exact nature of these warnings." This is precisely what the legends described. The team spent the next 2 hours setting up energy barriers and sensor arrays around the sealed container. It stood roughly 1 meter tall, made of a dark metal that resisted all their scanning attempts. Ancient symbols covered its surface, and a locking mechanism of bewildering complexity secured its lid. "Dr. Vexenar," Karen said, approaching the archaeologist with her characteristic calm demeanor, "once you finish cataloging everything, would it be possible for me to take a look at the device?" Every alien in the chamber turned to stare at her. Vexenar's mandibles clicked in what his species expressed as shock. "Lieutenant Hughes," he said carefully, "you understand that this is potentially the most dangerous artifact ever discovered? The progenitors sealed it away for a reason." "Oh, I understand," Karen replied with a slight smile. "I'm just curious about the design. Earth would appreciate the opportunity to study it from a human perspective." Commander Zalthos moved between Karen and the container, his imposing form blocking her view. "The casual attitude your species displays toward matters of galactic security continues to baffle me," he said. This is not some trinket to be examined on a whim. No one said anything about a whim, Danny interjected mildly. We respect the proper protocols. We're just expressing interest in participating in the research. Humans, muttered one of the Raxian soldiers, a comment that drew agreeing nods from several other aliens. The excavation team continued their work, carefully documenting every symbol and measurement. The vault's environmental systems activated on their own, responding to the presence of living beings after countless millennia of dormancy. Lights flickered to life along the walls, revealing murals that depicted the progenitors, a graceful, humanoid species with elongated limbs and large eyes. Look at this, one researcher called out. These murals show the progenitors using the device. They appear to be, the researcher paused, confusion evident in their translated voice. They appear to be working on machinery? Vexinar scurried over to examine the murals more closely. Indeed, the ancient artwork showed progenitors using what appeared to be the containerized device on various pieces of equipment. But the images were stylized and difficult to interpret clearly. Perhaps it was a construction tool weaponized later, Zalthos suggested. Many civilizations have converted peaceful technology into instruments of war. That would explain the warnings, Vexinar agreed. The progenitors may have realized too late what they had created. Karen and Danny exchanged another glance, this one longer and more meaningful. Danny appeared to be suppressing a smile. Is something amusing, Professor Morris? Vexinar asked, noticing the human's expression. No, Danny said quickly. Just thinking about how different cultures interpret technology. It's fascinating from an anthropological standpoint. The team worked through the day and into the artificial night created by Theta 9's slow rotation. Finally, as exhaustion began to set in, Vexinar made a decision. We will open the container tomorrow, he announced. I want all senior researchers present, along with Commander Zalthos and his security team. We will proceed with maximum caution. Sounds good, Karen said. I'll contact Earth and let them know we're close to seeing what's inside. You will do no such thing, Zalthos said firmly. All communications regarding this discovery must go through proper Galactic Council channels. We cannot risk information about this weapon spreading before we understand its nature. It's just a status update from my superiors, Karen protested mildly. Denied, the commander said. Those are my orders. Karen shrugged and put away her communicator. Fair enough. Just thought I'd ask. As the team prepared to rest for the night, the vault systems continued their activation sequence. Ancient machinery hummed with power that had been stored for thousands of generations. The sealed container sat in the center of the chamber, waiting. And in the morning, when the environmental systems fully activated and the preservation field finally dropped, the team would see the infinite torque device for the first time. The weapon that legends claimed could tear apart the very fabric of space itself. None of them, except perhaps the two quiet humans, had any idea what they were really looking at. Morning on Theta 9 brought reinforcements that Karen hadn't expected. 3 Xanthari warships appeared in orbit, their arrival announced by Commander Zalthos with grim satisfaction. Admiral Kovan himself had come to oversee the opening of the container, along with what appeared to be half the Galactic Council's military forces. This seems like overkill, Danny whispered to Karen as they watched troops establish a perimeter around the entire excavation site. They're scared, Karen whispered back. Can't really blame them, given what they think is in there. The container sat exactly where they had left it, but now it was surrounded by enough firepower to level a small city. Energy shields hummed at maximum strength, and every soldier present wore full combat armor. The archaeological team looked tiny and fragile compared to the military presence. Admiral Corvin was an imposing figure even among his own people. The Xanthari stood nearly 3 meters tall, with 4 arms and a ridge of bone plates running down his spine. His black eyes surveyed the chamber with tactical precision. "Dr. Vexinar," Corvin's deep voice rumbled, "you may proceed with opening the container. My forces will intervene immediately if the device shows any signs of activation." "Understood, Admiral," Vexinar replied, visibly nervous. The archaeologist approached the container with trembling limbs, his scientific instruments held carefully in his multiple appendages. The locking mechanism proved surprisingly simple once Vexinar understood its basic principles. With a series of soft clicks, the ancient seals released. The lid lifted smoothly, revealing the contents to the assembled group. Inside, nestled in a perfectly preserved cradle of foam-like material, lay the infinite torque device. It was roughly half a meter long, with a handle at one end and a rotating head at the other. The metal gleamed despite its age, showing craftsmanship that surpassed even current galactic technology. Various settings and adjustment mechanisms covered its surface, and a power coupling at the base suggested it required an external energy source. Every alien in the chamber stared at it with a mixture of awe and terror. "It's beautiful," Vexinar breathed. "The engineering is extraordinary." "It's terrifying," Corvin corrected. "Begin the analysis. I want to know exactly what this weapon can do." The scientific team deployed their most advanced scanners. Energy readings, material composition analysis, and structural integrity tests all ran simultaneously. The data that came back made the researchers exchange worried glances. "The device is capable of generating rotational force exceeding anything in our current arsenal," one researcher reported. "The torque output as well. It's theoretically unlimited, depending on the power source." "Unlimited torque," Zolthos repeated quietly. The legends were true. This could tear apart a starship's hull as easily as tissue paper. Karen coughed quietly, covering what might have been a laugh. "Something funny, Lieutenant?" Admiral Corvin's 4 eyes focused on her with intensity. "No, sir," Karen said quickly. "Just clearing my throat. The dust in here is pretty thick." "The device appears to have multiple settings," another researcher announced. "Different heads for different applications. This suggests it was designed for precision as well as raw power. A weapon that can be calibrated," Vexinar said thoughtfully. "That makes it even more dangerous. It could be used for everything from assassination to planetary demolition." At that moment, the chamber's entrance announced a new arrival. A young human man in an engineering uniform walked in, carrying a toolkit and looking completely unbothered by the massive military presence. "Lieutenant Greg Patterson, Earth Engineering Corps, reporting as requested." The human gave a casual salute to Admiral Corvin, who towered over him. "Earth sent a technical consultant," Zolthos explained. "The Galactic Council wanted human expertise available, given your species' unique perspective on technology." Greg walked over to where the container sat, looked inside at the device, and immediately burst out laughing. He laughed so hard he had to lean against the container for support. "What is the meaning of this?" Admiral Corvin demanded, his voice dangerous. "You show disrespect to a weapon that could end civilizations?" I'm sorry, Greg gasped, trying to control his laughter. "It's just, you guys really thought, oh man, this is too good." "Explain yourself," Corvin ordered. "It's an impact wrench," Greg said, wiping tears from his eyes. "A really, really nice impact wrench. Probably the best one ever made, but still just an impact wrench." Silence filled the chamber. Every alien stared at Greg as if he had grown a second head. "A what?" Vexinar asked carefully. "An impact wrench. You know, for moving and tightening bolts? Automotive repair? Construction? Basic mechanical work?" Greg looked around at the blank expressions. "You guys don't know what an impact wrench is. We use molecular bonding and automated assembly systems," one of the Crithian researchers said stiffly. We have no need for such primitive mechanical fasteners. Wow, humans still use bolts and nuts for lots of stuff, Greg said. And when those bolts get really tight, you need something with serious torque to loosen them. Hence, impact wrench. You're telling me, Admiral Colvin said slowly, that this legendary progenitor weapon is actually a construction tool? Yep, Greg said cheerfully. Though I gotta say, if this thing works like I think it does, it would make auto repair a breeze. Do you guys mind if I test it? Absolutely not. Multiple voices shouted at once. Karen pulled out her personal communicator, ignoring the glares from Commander Zalthos. She dialed a number and waited. Hey, Grandpa, she said when someone answered. Remember that impact wrench you've been looking for? The one you said would be perfect for the Mustang? Admiral Corvin's eyes went wide with alarm. You're discussing the deployment of this weapon over an open channel. I'm talking to my grandfather, Karen said calmly. And yes, Grandpa, we found one. It's progenitor made, really old but in perfect condition. You want me to send it to you, or do you want to come pick it up? Through the communicator, everyone in the chamber could hear an elderly male voice express enthusiasm. I'll come get it myself. Been working on that Mustang for 6 months now, and I can't get the lug nuts off with my old wrench. Where are you? Theta 9 in the Outer Rim, Karen said. It's about 3 weeks' travel from Earth. I'll pack my bag. The voice on the other end sounded delighted. Tell them Joe Hughes is coming for his tool. Karen ended the call and looked at the assembled military forces. My grandfather will be here in about 3 weeks. He's a retired mechanic, so he knows how to handle impact wrenches safely. You cannot be serious, Admiral Colvin said, his forearms crossing in a gesture of absolute refusal. We are not allowing a random civilian, a human civilian, to take possession of a progenitor artifact. It's his field of expertise, Danny pointed out. If you want to understand what this tool does, my grandfather is probably the best person in the galaxy to demonstrate it. Tool, Vexinar repeated faintly. You keep calling it a tool. Because that's what it is, Greg said. He pulled up his datapad and showed them footage from Earth. See? This is a mechanic shop. And that's an impact wrench being used to remove tire lug nuts. And that's one being used in construction. They're super common. The aliens watched the footage with growing horror. Humans were using devices capable of generating enormous torque as casual, everyday items. Workers operated them with one hand while chatting with colleagues. Children walked past active impact wrenches without fear. Your species uses weapons of mass destruction for routine maintenance? Zalthos asked, his voice hollow with shock. They're not weapons, Greg protested. They're tools. Very useful tools. This device could shear through starship hull plating, Vexinar pointed out. Well, yeah, Greg admitted. I mean, lug nuts can get really tight sometimes, especially on heavy machinery. You need serious torque to break them loose. Admiral Corvin activated his communicator. This is Corvin to Galactic Council Emergency Session. We have a situation. The Galactic Council's emergency session lasted 6 hours, with representatives from 47 species arguing about what to do with the progenitor device. Admiral Corvin remained on Theta 9, his fleet blocking all traffic to and from the planet. The excavation site had transformed into a military fortress, with troops patrolling constantly. Karen and Danny sat in their assigned quarters, drinking coffee and watching the alien soldiers march past their window. Think they'll actually let Grandpa Joe come? Danny asked. They can't really stop him, Karen said with a smile. He filed all the proper civilian travel permits before he left Earth. Technically, he's just visiting family. They're going to lose their minds when they see him. Oh, absolutely. 3 weeks later, exactly on schedule, a small civilian transport ship entered the Theta 9 system. Admiral Corvin's fleet immediately moved to intercept it, weapons powering up. "Unidentified vessel, state your purpose," the communication officer demanded. "This is the Earth transport ship Wanderer," a cheerful female voice responded. "Captain Melissa Grant here. I've got a passenger who says he's picking up a tool from his granddaughter." "Denied," Corvin said flatly. "Turn back immediately." "Can't do that, Admiral," Captain Grant replied. "My passenger has proper permits and galactic travel authorization. Unless you want to start a diplomatic incident with Earth, I'm bringing him down." Corvin's mandibles clicked in frustration. He checked the legal codes. The human was right. They had no grounds to refuse entry to someone with proper documentation. "You may land," he said reluctantly, "but your passenger will be escorted at all times." "Roger that, Admiral." "Coming in now." The transport touched down outside the excavation site, and the boarding ramp extended. What emerged made every alien present question their understanding of humanity. Grandpa Joe Hughes was 73 years old, with white hair, weathered skin, and a friendly smile. He wore blue coveralls with grease stains and carried an ancient toolbox that looked like it had seen decades of use. He waved cheerfully at the assembled troops. "Howdy," he called out. "Beautiful planet you got here. Bit dusty, but I've worked in worse." Commander Zalthos approached him, flanked by armed guards. "Joseph Hughes?" "That's me," Joe said. "But everyone calls me Joe. You must be in charge of security here. Appreciate you keeping my granddaughter safe." "We are not here to protect your granddaughter," Zalthos said stiffly. "We are here to secure a potentially dangerous artifact." "Oh, you mean my impact wrench?" Joe's face lit up. "Karen said, you folks found a progenitor model. I've been looking for one of those for years. The Earth models just don't have the same build quality." "This is not a joke," Zalthos insisted. "The device you refer to is a weapon of immense power. Son, I've been working with impact wrenches since before you were hatched," Joe said kindly. "I know exactly what they can do. Now, can I see my granddaughter?" Karen came running out of the facility, giving her grandfather a big hug. "Grandpa Joe, how was the trip?" "Long but comfortable," Joe said. "Captain Grant runs a nice ship." "Now, where's this wrench you found?" "Inside," Karen said. "But there's a lot of security." "I can see that." Joe looked around at the military presence with amusement. "Seems like overkill for a hand tool." High Arbiter Quencha's holographic form materialized in the center of the compound. The supreme authority of the Galactic Council looked down at the elderly human with all 6 of her eyes. "Joseph Hughes," she said formally. "The Galactic Council demands an explanation. Why has Earth sent you to claim the progenitor device?" "Well, ma'am," Joe said respectfully, "I'm here because my granddaughter called and said she found a really good impact wrench. I've been restoring a 1967 Ford Mustang, and the lug nuts are seized something fierce. My old wrench doesn't have enough torque to break them loose." Quencha's translator took a moment to process this. "You want to use a progenitor artifact to repair a primitive ground vehicle?" "Mustangs aren't primitive," Joe said, slightly offended. "They're classics. Beautiful machines. I'm doing a full restoration engine rebuild, new transmission, the works. But I can't get the wheels off with my current tools." "This cannot be happening," Vexinar said faintly. He had emerged from the excavation site to witness this conversation. "You truly believe the infinite torque device is meant for automotive repair?" "I don't believe it, I know it," Joe said. "Look, I brought pictures." He pulled out a datapad and showed them images of his Mustang. "See? Got her up on blocks in my garage. Been working on her every weekend. The previous owner really over-tightened those lug nuts." The aliens stared at the images of the antique vehicle. It looked like something from a museum all metal construction, internal combustion engine, manual controls. Why do you not simply purchase a new transport? Quencha asked, genuinely confused. Because that's not the point, Joe said patiently. This Mustang is history. It's art. It's a connection to Earth's automotive heritage. My father drove one just like it, and his father before him. Restoring her is about preserving that legacy. You maintain ancient technology as a hobby? Admiral Corvin asked. Sure do, Joe said proudly. Lots of humans do. We've got whole communities dedicated to it. Classic cars, vintage motorcycles, antique machinery. We love keeping the old stuff running. But why? Vexinar couldn't comprehend it. Modern transportation is safer, more efficient, more comfortable. It's also boring, Joe said. No character, no soul. When you work on something with your own hands, when you understand every part and how it fits together, when you finally get that engine purring just right, that satisfaction you can't get from an automated factory product. Greg had joined them, nodding in agreement. My dad and I restored a 1972 Chevy truck. Best summer of my life. Your species deliberately makes things difficult for yourselves, Zalto said. We call it having hobbies, Karen said. High Arbiter Quencha looked at the ancient human in his stained coveralls. The Galactic Council has deliberated extensively on the progenitor device. We cannot simply allow it to leave our custody. I understand your concern, ma'am, Joe said. How about this? Let me demonstrate what it's for. You got any equipment around here with bolts? This is highly irregular, Quencha said. But practical, Ambassador Helen Cooper said, her hologram appearing next to Quencha. The senior Earth diplomat had been monitoring the situation. High Arbiter, perhaps a demonstration would resolve this matter. If Joe can prove the device is simply a tool, the Council can make an informed decision. Quencha considered this. Very well, but the demonstration will be conducted under strict security protocols. Fair enough, Joe said. Now, someone want to show me this wrench? And please tell me you've got a power source. These old progenitor models usually need a charge after sitting for a few thousand years. The group moved toward the excavation site. Alien troops maintained their perimeter, weapons ready. In the center of all this military might walked one elderly human in coveralls, completely unconcerned. He was about to show the galaxy that the most legendary weapon in progenitor history was actually just a really well-made impact wrench. And he was going to use it to fix his car. Inside the excavation chamber, Grandpa Joe set down his toolbox and approached the container with the reverence of a man looking at a masterpiece. The progenitor impact wrench gleamed under the artificial lights, its ancient metal still perfect after thousands of years. Now that's what I call craftsmanship, Joe said admiringly. Look at that balance. And the grip design ergonomic even by modern standards. The progenitors really knew their stuff. Please maintain a safe distance, Commander Zalthos warned. Energy barriers hummed between Joe and the device. Can't properly examine it from over here, Joe pointed out. How about you lower those shields and let me take a closer look? Admiral Corvin shook his head. Absolutely not. The device remains contained until we understand its full capabilities. Ambassador Cooper's hologram flickered slightly as she reviewed data on her end. High Arbiter, I've brought documentation that might help. Earth historical records, mechanical engineering textbooks, and maintenance manuals for impact wrenches dating back 300 years. A massive data transfer began, flooding the Galactic Council systems with human technical documentation. Aliens across the galaxy started reading about torque specifications, socket sizes, and proper pneumatic tool maintenance. This is extraordinary, Vexinar said, scrolling through the information. Humans have been using high-torque rotational tools for centuries. And you use them for everything: construction, manufacturing, vehicle maintenance, even art installation. Of course we do, Greg said. They're incredibly useful. How else would you tighten large bolts? Molecular bonding, one of the Crithian researchers said. Or magnetic locks. Or gravity clamps. There are dozens of modern alternatives. Those are great for new construction, Danny agreed. But what about maintaining existing structures? What about antiques? What about situations where you need to be able to disassemble and reassemble something multiple times? The alien researchers looked at each other. They genuinely hadn't considered these scenarios. Their technology focused on permanent solutions. We don't really do maintenance the way you describe, Vexenar admitted. When something breaks, we typically replace the entire unit. That's wasteful, Joe said. And it means you can't preserve history. What happens to your old buildings, your antique machinery, your cultural artifacts? They are placed in museums with preservation fields, Quentia said. But never touched? Never operated? Never actually used? Joe looked sad. That's not preservation. That's just freezing things in time. Real preservation means keeping things functional, understanding how they work, being able to demonstrate them to future generations. This concept clearly troubled the assembled aliens. They had never thought about the difference between static preservation and functional maintenance. The human approach has merit, Ambassador Cooper said. Our museums feature working exhibits. Children can watch antique machines operate, touch reproductions, understand the progression of technology. It's educational and culturally significant. It's also dangerous, Admiral Corvin pointed out, allowing civilians to operate powerful equipment. With proper training, it's perfectly safe, Joe said. I've been using impact wrenches for 55 years, and I've still got all my fingers. You just need to follow basic safety procedures. Which are? Vexenar asked, his scientific curiosity overcoming his fear. Joe launched into an enthusiastic explanation of impact wrench safety. Proper grip techniques, checking the socket size, ensuring the bolt was aligned correctly, wearing appropriate protective equipment, and never exceeding the tool's rated specifications. The aliens listened with fascination. You have formalized protocols for this? Quentia asked. Of course, Ambassador Cooper said. Earth has entire regulatory agencies dedicated to tool safety. We have standards, certifications, training programs, and professional organizations. The Galactic Council has similar structures for much more dangerous equipment. This comparison made the aliens pause. They did indeed have extensive safety protocols for their technology. Why should human mechanical tools be any different? I propose a compromise, Vexenar said suddenly. Allow Joseph Hughes to demonstrate the device under controlled conditions. We provide the equipment to be worked on, we maintain security protocols, and we observe the actual function of the tool. This is acceptable, Quentia said after a moment's consideration. But what equipment shall we use for the demonstration? How about one of your excavation vehicles? Joe suggested. Those big-wheeled rigs outside? I bet they have bolts holding their wheels on. Zolthos looked horrified. You want to remove the wheels from a council vehicle? Just one wheel, Joe said reasonably. Then I'll put it right back on. That's the whole point of removable fasteners. You can take them off and put them back. After much debate and several more emergency communications with the Galactic Council, they agreed. The excavation vehicle was moved into position. Greg examined the wheel assembly and confirmed it used mechanical bolts, 6 of them, each one roughly 10 centimeters in diameter. Those are some serious lug nuts, Joe said appreciatively. This is going to be perfect. Now, about that power source. Greg had been working on that problem. The progenitor impact wrench used an energy coupling system that was actually compatible with modern galactic power cells. With some modification, he rigged up an adapter, triple-checked all the connections, and gave Joe a thumbs up. We're good to go, Grandpa. Excellent. Joe picked up the ancient tool, feeling its weight and balance. Before I demonstrate, let me explain what's going to happen. This impact wrench will grip the bolt head and apply rotational force in short, powerful bursts. The impact mechanism prevents the tool from binding up and makes it easier to break loose stuck fasteners. You'll hear a distinctive sound, kind of a rattling or hammering noise. That's normal. The aliens established a safety perimeter. Energy shields were ready to activate at the first sign of trouble. Medical teams stood by. Admiral Corvin had his hand on a control that would flood the area with containment foam if necessary. Joe looked at all the preparations and shook his head with amusement. Y'all are really committed to this, aren't you? Proceed when ready, Quentia commanded. Joe knelt by the wheel, selected the appropriate socket from his toolbox, and attached it to the impact wrench. He positioned it on the first bolt, checked his grip, and activated the tool. The sound that echoed through the chamber made every alien flinch. A rapid-fire hammering noise, mechanical and powerful. The bolt, which had been tightened by heavy machinery, began to turn. In 3 seconds, it came loose. First one done, Joe said cheerfully. 5 more to go. He worked methodically, loosening each bolt in sequence. The aliens watched in stunned silence. This legendary weapon, this artifact of immense power, was being used exactly as the humans had claimed to remove wheel bolts. When all 6 bolts were loose, Joe set down the impact wrench. Now I'll remove them by hand for the last few turns. Then we take off the wheel, examine it, and put it back. After that, I'll use the wrench to tighten the bolts again. Watch closely. This is how you maintain mechanical equipment. Quentia's hologram flickered. This is really just a maintenance tool. Told you, Karen said, grinning at her grandfather's demonstration. But the revelation was only beginning. Dr. Vexenar stared at the wheel Joe had just removed from the excavation vehicle. His entire understanding of progenitor civilization was crumbling. For 3 years, he had believed they were searching for weapons. Now he had to accept a completely different truth. The warning glyphs, he said suddenly. We need to retranslate them with proper context. The translation team worked frantically, adjusting their interpretation based on this new understanding. What emerged made perfect sense if you knew what an impact wrench was. Power beyond measure, one researcher read aloud. That's not a threat, it's a specification. The tool can generate high torque levels, capable of tearing apart the strongest bonds, another added. They meant mechanical bonds, bolts, and fasteners. Use only with greatest wisdom and understanding, Vexenar finished. That's a safety warning. Improper use could cause injury or damage. It's an instruction manual, Danny said. You've been reading a user safety guide as if it were a doomsday prophecy. The realization spread through the alien researchers like wildfire. Every warning they had interpreted as evidence of a terrible weapon was actually just standard safety information. Admiral Corvin looked at his fleet deployment, his armed troops, and the massive security apparatus he had constructed around a simple hand tool. His scales flushed with what might have been embarrassment. So the progenitors were not warriors, he said quietly. They were builders, Joe said, carefully lifting the wheel back into position. Engineers and craftsmen, just like the mural showed. They were working on machinery because that's what they did. They built things and maintained them. But why seal it in a vault? Zolthos asked. Why all the ceremony? Maybe it wasn't a vault, Greg suggested. Maybe it was a storage facility? A tool repository? We found it on a dead world, right? Maybe the progenitors were abandoning this planet, and they left behind a cache of equipment for future use. Or for whoever came after them, Danny added. A gift to the species that would eventually explore the galaxy. High-quality tools that would last for thousands of years. Vexenar's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of excited realization among his species. That would explain the preservation systems. The environmental controls. They weren't sealing away a weapon. They were protecting valuable equipment from decay. Joe finished tightening the bolts, using the impact wrench to secure each one. The familiar rattling sound no longer made the aliens nervous. Now they understood what they were hearing. "There," Joe said with satisfaction. "All done. Wheels back on, properly torqued, safe to drive. That's how you do basic maintenance." High Arbiter Quentia looked at the elderly human. "Joseph Hughes, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I apologize. We grossly misunderstood the nature of this discovery." "No harm done," Joe said kindly. "Cultural misunderstandings happen. The important thing is we figured it out." "But this raises so many questions," Vexenar said. "If the progenitors left tools behind, what else did they leave? How many other artifacts have we misidentified as weapons?" "That's a good question," Danny said. "I bet there are progenitor sites all over the galaxy that have been classified as dangerous, when they're actually just storage depots or workshops." "We need to establish a new research initiative," Quentia declared. "A complete review of all known progenitor sites. We will examine them not as military installations, but as the cultural and technological legacy of a civilization of builders." "I volunteer to assist," Vexenar said immediately. "This changes everything we thought we knew about the progenitors. Earth would be happy to contribute our expertise in mechanical engineering and tool identification," Ambassador Cooper offered. "We have extensive experience with hand tools and their applications." "Accepted," Quentia said. "This will be a joint effort between all Council species. We have much to learn." Admiral Corvin ordered his fleet to stand down. The military presence that had seemed so necessary hours ago now felt ridiculous. Troops began packing up equipment, looking sheepish about having deployed in full combat readiness against a hand tool. "So, about that impact wrench," Joe said. "Is it okay if I take it home? I really do need it for my Mustang." The question prompted another debate, but this time it was brief. The Galactic Council agreed that the tool should go to someone who would actually use it as intended. However, they asked Joe to document his use of it and share the information with progenitor researchers. "I can do that," Joe said. "I'll make a whole video series. Restoration of a classic Mustang using progenitor tools. Might get some good views on Earth's maker networks." "We would appreciate detailed documentation," Vexenar said. "Understanding how the progenitors intended their tools to be used will help us interpret other artifacts." Karin helped her grandfather pack up the impact wrench. It fit perfectly in his old toolbox, looking right at home among his well-worn wrenches and screwdrivers. "This is going to make the restoration so much easier," Joe said happily. "Those lug nuts won't know what hit them." "Grandpa, you realize you're going to be famous, right?" Karen said. "The man who solved the mystery of the infinite torque device." "I just want to finish my car," Joe said. "But if it helps the galaxy understand the progenitors better, that's good too." 3 weeks later, Joe was back in his garage on Earth. The progenitor impact wrench hummed to life, its ancient power source interfacing perfectly with his modern charging system. He positioned it on the first stubborn lug nut and activated it. The bolt that had resisted all his previous efforts came loose in seconds. Joe grinned. "Now that's what I call quality engineering." Karen and Danny had come to help with the restoration. They documented everything while Joe worked, sending regular updates to Dr. Vexenar and the progenitor research team. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the systematic review of progenitor sites had begun. What researchers had thought were weapon caches turned out to be tool libraries. Supposed doomsday devices were actually construction equipment. Defense installations were revealed as maintenance facilities. The progenitors had not been warriors. They had been master craftsmen who valued quality durability, and the preservation of knowledge. They had left behind not weapons of destruction, but tools of creation. Vexenar published his findings in a landmark paper that revolutionized progenitor studies. He dedicated it to Joseph Hughes, whose practical wisdom illuminated what scholarship had obscured. On Earth, Joe finished installing the new transmission in his Mustang. He lowered it off the blocks, climbed into the driver's seat, and turned the key. The engine roared to life, running smoothly after months of careful restoration. Corinne recorded the moment. "There you go, Vexenar." One 1967 Ford Mustang, fully restored using a combination of human ingenuity and progenitor engineering. The video of Joe driving his Mustang down the street became oddly popular across the galaxy. Aliens fascinated by human mechanical culture watched in amazement as the antique vehicle performed perfectly. Some species even started exploring their own historical technologies. Museums began developing interactive exhibits. The concept of hands-on learning spread to educational systems that had relied entirely on virtual instruction. Joe received messages from researchers all over the galaxy, asking about tool maintenance, mechanical fasteners, and the philosophy of preservation through use rather than static display. He answered every message patiently, always happy to share his knowledge. "You know what's funny?" Danny said one evening, watching Joe tune the Mustang's engine. "The aliens spent 3 years searching for the most dangerous weapon in the galaxy, and they found the most useful tool instead. Sometimes the things that build are more powerful than the things that destroy," Joe said. The progenitors understood that. They left us tools because they knew the galaxy would need builders, not warriors. Corinne smiled. "Think there are more progenitor tools out there waiting to be found?" "Probably," Joe said. "And now that everyone knows what to look for, I bet we'll find them. Whole workshops full of equipment, just waiting for someone who knows how to use them." The Mustang's engine purred like a contented cat. Joe had done it, a complete restoration using tools both ancient and modern. The progenitor impact wrench sat in its place of honor in his toolbox, ready for the next project. Above Earth, ships from a dozen different species traveled the space lanes. In their cargo holds, alongside sophisticated technology, many now carried simple mechanical tools. They had learned something valuable from humanity and the progenitors both. Sometimes the best way to preserve the past was to keep it working. And sometimes a legendary weapon was really just a wrench that needed the right hands to understand it.